Welcome back, everyone. DestinysJesus here. In this video, we're looking at how Tayson was able to win the All-Star Grand Finals and $150,000 while doing so. Look at a bunch of the really good heads-up plays that he was making that you guys can implement into your own gameplay, as well as a bunch of different things that we were covering in the coaching sessions leading up to it, as well as some of the notes and stuff that would be really useful for you guys if you want to improve at solos, especially for these solo cash cups that are coming up that do have a pretty decent prize pool that you guys can earn from. I'll also be including a bunch of different notes and stuff from the other players I was working with, like Venno, Kinzel, and Reason, all who finished in the top 10 on my solos masterclass, so make sure you go check out the first link in the description. But let's get straight into the second game from Tayson, where he was able to finish a nice 4-kill win. So one criminally underrated thing that you guys need to start doing is just trying to give yourself a little bit of advantage when it comes to positioning, just by understanding how the zone mechanics work. There's something that's called zone hacks, basically understanding how they work in such good detail, because you've already so much made recordings of so many different zones and where they pull. You can basically just figure out where they're going to go, just because zones are predetermined, and if something's predetermined, it is predictable. So right here, most players make a mistake of thinking it's going to pull towards Misty, just because the zone is kind of pulling towards the south side. However, one key thing to look at is that the ocean on this side really isn't showing too much, and it's often pulling towards in the land a little bit. What that tells me is either going to be a middle map zone, or even more likely it's going to pull somewhat north and kind of rebound upwards. As you can see here from the battle map, it basically does that exactly. So as you can see here, zone was pulling quite far south. However, because of the fact it's not pulling fully south, and Tayson's aware of that, he positions really nicely on this edge bridge where he knows he's likely to get second zone, and you also can get some storm surge tags, which is really crucial to having success in these games. Gets edge of second, really in a good spot right now since he's really found this bridge and he's got a nice base to get storm surge from. So one of the easiest ways that you guys watching this video right now can elevate your solo gameplay, it's also helping trios as well, is just understanding how line of sight works, or LOS. So line of sight basically means other players who are near you can see you and possibly tag you as well. Line of sight is influenced by a whole lot of different things like terrain, trees, understanding how the builds and stuff that you can rotate through, and it is really crucial to make sure you're not underbuilding in spots where you can get beamed, and you're not overbuilding in spots where you can't get beamed. This rotate here was probably the best example from the whole tourney on how using line of sight is so important at conserving and saving your mats, and also just making sure your endgame is good. So first of all, you see that ramp that he does really nicely behind him, just blocks off anybody's line of sight from behind him to beam him as he gets in his car, and he knows this player in front of him is left and rotate out that box, so he's got a very free car rotate, which might normally be quite risky, but because he's scouted out for about a minute previous to this, he's in a really position to make this rotate for free. Gets out of car, of course. Now he begins rotating on foot, and this is a really good example, just understanding as he's coming in here how the line of sight works. So you can see he could be rotating underneath this player where they can shoot him at any point, and there's also a large amount of players in front of him who can shoot him, but instead he decides to slide down this hill after building just one more to protect himself. Builds to cover this player that can see him, and as soon as he gets past this little ridge here with the fence, this other player's downhill from him, so he can't really see him. He doesn't build at all and makes a really nice cheap rotate into the ender zone. Gets in on low ground, gets in a spot where he can refarm, didn't take any damage, and also used an insanely little amount of mats on that one rotate. So one key thing to doing well in solos is having a little bit of confidence in making sure that you go for plays when needed. A big mistake that people do is they try to play too confident when they're in a really good position, which obviously leads them to taking too many risks and then possibly dying. And then also when they're in a really shambles position, they play too scared. So you can see here, Tayson's kind of on the middle ground. He's got good heals, good mats, but doesn't really have any movement, so this endgame is going to be pretty hard, especially if he gets that max 50-50 zone. As soon as he hears these players fighting near him, however, he knows this is a good opportunity for him to make a play and go something. It isn't a very risky way. You can see here, no Riley just went ahead and actually got a kill, and then as soon as he did that, he actually makes a mistake of not being aware of the line of sight that's near him, and as you can see here, as he runs through, it's a player looking at the sniper up on the hill, and he gets sniped with insanely and dies. As soon as that happened, Tayson capitalizes on it, gets all the mats, 2 pads, and the chug cannon, and it instantly starts just making his way and running away from this other player who jumps on. One key takeaway is just to make sure that when you're in a shambles situation, or you're not even in the best ideal situation, try to look for opportunities and plays, since one small refresh can change your game completely. However, when you're stacked like Tayson is now, you're going to see he doesn't take any risks at all in terms of a refresh. He instead just plays really solid fundamentals right here in a second. So this next play that Tayson does is really unique. Out of all 38 players alive in this endgame, he's literally the only person to do the small pre-rotate, as I like to call it. So basically what you're doing is whenever you get a really bad zone, is just start a nice little pre-rotate to zone. It can be on first movement, it can be on 50-50, and what he does here is really nice. So he's not really got the best visibility and everything from back here. He can't really plan out his rotate or figure out a good flight path for his pad. Also doesn't have the best options to recycle into somebody else's pad if needed. So what he goes and does is rotate in hard mats towards his front side, obviously using wood for that small transitional period. Now he's in a much better position, as you can see here, to easily recycle someone else's pad, or just to use his own and not get pumped in the back as he jumps on it. Imagine he was back in his box here. As soon as he edits out to place the pad, bad sniper just edits open and puts a one pump on him, or hits 100 damage and then flies into his box. Really easy to happen, especially in these stacked solo games where everyone needs a kill. So just doing a simple pre-rotate, using about 10 builds to get forward, and then just getting a much better position to scout and make your decision. So you can see here he does a low pad, really nicely done. Make sure you figure out his flight path before he actually goes, and at this point while he's in the air, the big mistake that a lot of players make that I think is really disastrous is landing completely on the front side of Storm, like where Knife is landing now. You can see how many players are literally landing on that front. It's really easy to get 50-50 or have someone in your box, or to get hit or edited down or something like that. So what Tayson does is correct, is he lands on the edge hand side of Storm, as you can see. Make sure he builds and just takes a second to breathe here and just relax, so you can figure out where the players are around him, making sure he's looking around this entire time. And then as soon as they rotate and other people are actually doing a rotate for him, he's obviously going to build this whole thing, since that's not really the best play to do in solos. He lets this other player rotate for him, goes ahead and builds all around himself, and then starts chopping to the tarp, and basically has a really cheap first moving rotate. So that one thing with figuring out the flight path from the pad after doing that pre-rotate and landing on edge, he's basically rotated first moving with a really minimal amount of mats. So this next concept is really simple, how it does have a big impact on your gameplay, and if you guys implement it properly, I guarantee you'll be getting more elims every single endgame that you play, in either solos or trios or duos or squads. It works exactly the same no matter what. It's something really simple called the red line theory, and this is how it works. So you can see here Tayson does it perfectly, just looks back on Storm and gets an elim on ways very simple as he runs out of mats. Might not look anything too complicated, obviously it's pretty normal play to do, however this is the easiest way that you guys can get more elims during the end game and also get more impactful refreshes. So this is how it works. Basically, on this end of moving zone, whenever you're in the end of zone, this is the perfect time where you're in this red zone where you're going to be able to find a refresh, because there's a lot more congestion, there's a lot more players rotating into you, you've got edit controls, a lot of different plays you can do, like shooting people down, killing people on backside of Storm, and that basically just means whenever you're in this red zone, you're going to be trying and actively looking to get a kill. This is how it looks actually in game, as you can see here. Basically, all of these other players are going ahead and rotating forward, and this moving zone, it pulled from bottom right on 50-50, pulled like this. You can see a bunch of players straggling on backside of Storm. Tayson does a really good job, as you can see, he's this player, of rotating further into the end of Storm. He's actually the furthest, the deepest into Storm compared to most people. He's got the widest angle to look for a kill on his backside, and he actually just immediately gets one on Waze here, who's on that backside, coming into that red zone where Tayson controls a lot of the area. It's a really simple concept. It works a 50-50 zone, works for first moving, second moving, third moving. It pretty much works for ninth moving as well on the final zone. So I'd recommend you guys just practice implementing this. Whenever you VOD, think about how you can get into that red line to get a refresh, and I guarantee you will improve your ability to get kills during the end game and crucial refreshes, which are really important in solos. So this next sequence of plays by Tayson was pretty much perfect, and it is one of the easiest ways you can get high. So first of all, he just basically rotates by just using some pretty simple ramp tarps. Again, with the zero pressure, he's just using wood. Immediately stops to brick as soon as he gets pressured, and he knows there's the chance of somebody flying towards him, as you can hear. So he just boxes up, lets his other players land, evaluates where they're landing at, also looks back again, trying to look for a kill on that backside of Storm since he's ahead of people. And at this point, immediately starts scouting and figuring out how these other players rotate ahead of him. This is the good thing with solos, is the fact that you can just let other players rotate for you, and then just mirror on top of the builds as he does here. And as soon as he gets towards his high layer, immediately just perfect play, block off his height, looked and actually just got a little bit of a scouting on height, immediately just does a 90 from the front side, gets a beam on Benji on the back side, and as soon as he gets that little bit of damage, he just immediately goes up and up and up. Just wants to make sure that the player falls down, and he gets height pretty much perfectly. A lot of players make the mistake of going for height from the backside, and Tayson does this perfectly here, where he goes completely to the front, gets a beam, which is really crucial, and then goes even further up to prevent the other player. At that point, Benji is either faced with just trying to ramp height when he's low shield, or he's basically about to get cracked, and try to fight somebody on the front side, which is pretty much impossible. And it's all about the counter pressure from two different sides. He's getting pressured from Storm behind him and Tayson in front of him, so he basically tries to instantly concede height. And then from here, is a really simple job on just sitting on high ground, spray, make sure he's getting these kills on players dropping down like Myro. There goes Bungie falling down as well, and doesn't take any risks again in this endgame. He's got good mats, he's got slurp cannon to win the 1v1, he just lets all these other players go ahead and fight it out on low ground and just stays on height and pressures the entire time, which is pretty much what you should do in this situation. So one of the reasons I think Tayson is the best in the world at the moment is how easily he's able to convert a 1v1 situation into win. He never really feels that pressure that a lot of players experience in a 1v1, and he's pretty much always able to convert it into the victory royale. So you can see here he's sitting up on height, pressuring Teak. He knows Teak just got a load of kills on backside of Storm. There's a load of loot on low ground that he can get, so he tries to interrupt it, doesn't really hit the best peak there, and then as soon as he comes up, he just swaps into this kind of really methodical, thought out playstyle of Fortnite, which he's kind of known for. So you can see here, it's just some really simple builds, conserving his mats, making sure everything's reloaded, full heals up as well, and at this point Teak makes a big misplay in my opinion, as he drops down and tries to refarm the tree. I guarantee you most of you players watching this would have dropped down to refarm the tree, but that immediately tells Tayson, oh, I've got more mats than this guy, he's trying to refarm a tree in a 1v1, what is he doing? So he instead can just sit up on height, he goes ahead and reconnects height, does a really 200 IQ player spraying the tree to actually grief his mats and force him out of that position, knowing he's not really got too much cover. Now at this point, takes a really smart peek here. He actually allows himself to get hit for a decent amount of damage, but he knows at this range, obviously you can't get one pumped, and he has that chug cannon and minis on height as well as more mats than the other player. So he allows himself to get this trade, do the shield check, get the large amount of damage onto Teak, and at this point just let Storm do the work. They get ticked in backside of Storm, and even if he didn't die to Storm there, he could easily just right peek to the top and hit that shot. So during this endgame, Tayson makes a really smart play to actually convert from going into a top 10 position into a top 2 and getting way more placement points while doing so. He drops down a lower layer here and actually gets into the spot where he can chop through all of these old builds since Zone's pulling back. First of all, it's just a really smart play to do. Also make sure he's airtight around, and this is the big thing here. You can see he's in a good position to actually go for a kill on backside of Storm. He sees a lot of loot as well that he could possibly go towards, and obviously looking at his mats, it might be the best play to go for it since he's not really on the best of builds. Have you noticed all of those players have just died on backside of Storm? Everybody in this area has heard it and they're going to be looking for that loot as well. So instead of jumping down straight away, he sits up here really patiently, knowing it's pulling through our builds. He doesn't really need the mats, gets a massive chunk on Kinzel, and then just keeps moving forward through these old builds and staying front side. That basically is avoiding going down there, saved him, got into a top 5 position now. It ends up playing back through the builds again the way it just came, and now in this spot you just make sure he stays completely front side using minimal builds here and gets into a really nice position where he can come into a final kind of closing zone spot. Chops through the builds, make sure he's airtight the entire time, gets medkits as well at this point. He's not able to pop this medkit, and now he's in this kind of scuffed position where he's in the final build that he's got, and he's not really too healthy at all. Now at this point again, you could try playing a medkit, you could try tarping forward for a second, but knowing that he's probably not going to have the highest success rate and maybe get top 3 at max, he knows that he has to commit to claiming a layer, which is trying to drop down and claim this kill on Buyback. It lags, but as you can see, he actually hops down here, hits a really nice shot onto Buyback, it gets the chug cannon, and he knows because of that refresh, he's just got a little bit of sniper mat. As long as he survives enough for this other player who's jumping and running around the walls, as you can see here, it's Kinzel, he dies to Storm. Now, knowing that he survived that enough time, all he has to do is try to win this 1v1, which he wasn't able to do just because Anderlecht is sitting up on height with a really good situation on mats. But still, getting from a top 10 pretty shambles into a top 2 and getting all those placement points is absolutely insane. So this is one of the key things that we were implementing on the day of the tournament, so we're basically hitting all the VODs of the OCE game winners, and this is a strategy that Muzz was doing the whole time. It's basically looking around on his floors, on players below him to actually get damage and possibly get kills as well, and then maybe even try to get the mats. Basically takes away that risk of going for a pump trade on somebody who's on your wall. So as you can see here, Seti's on his wall here in a second, and Tayson, instead of just going for a really risky trade play, instead just resets, lets him drop down to low. Now he uses his floor edit, gets the elim on Kiko as well. Could have possibly tanked for those mats, but now in this 1v1v1 situation, drops down towards low ground, wants to get out of his open line of sight and get into these old builds, hops through here, and the player on height in this final 1v1, if you guys have seen my coaching video, was Vito, gets a lot of damage onto this other player. Tayson gets the elim, should have taken some more time to actually get the mats rather than just keep him moving forward, and they both basically jump down on 0 mats into this 1v1 Angel, and Tayson hits the final shot to win $150,000. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to go check out the Solos Masterclass. As I said, I'll be adding a bunch of the videos and notes from the other players that I was working with as well if you guys want to see those in full. And also make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed.